Ivy, Michelle. I hope I say it right. Alwedo. Yes. Could you just give them a hand? Thank you for joining us this evening, ladies. So, we are celebrating Igbo initiative. We are celebrating the Lantern Meat Foundation. We are also celebrating the publication of the Street Lights at Noon Eclipse. And we are grateful to have you guys join us this evening. We are grateful to have the people that are joining us online as well. Ladies, it's lovely to have you as well. Sorry about that. My name is Charity and I'll be the host this evening. So before we start, I'd like to ask both of you to briefly tell us about yourselves.
Good evening, everybody. My full name is Rachel Kuhinira Masinde. I never know how to answer this question. But anyway, I can tell you what I do. I'm a mother of 2 active boys. I am an engineer by profession and enjoyment. I co-own a business. I am learning how to farm vegetables, and I write. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I'm very shy, so I might shake when I'm speaking. My name is Michelle. I'm 20. I think also. I am a guardian of one, if that makes sense. She's 17, so 1 more year and she's free of me. I like butterflies. I do like eating, but I think I like cooking more, and I write.
Thank you for telling us about yourselves. Just to let you know, Rachel didn't mention she's the board chair for the Lantern Meat Foundation. And then Michelle Ivy. Which would you prefer, Ivy or Michelle? Okay. So Michelle Ivy is the first person to be published under the Igbo initiative. And so I wanted to find out from both of you, what drew you to the Lantern Meat? Rachel?
What drew me to the Lantern Meat? So long ago. Friends and poetry. I got an invitation from Jason Itaro, who I knew from my other circles. And he said, "Oh, I heard you write poetry." This was towards the end of our campus life. So I said, "Yeah, sure." And says, "We meet on Sundays in the afternoon at 4 p.m. Bring your poetry." So I did. I went with my book full of poetry. And there we were, maybe 6 or 7 people reading our own poetry. And it was wonderful. Because I used to torment my engineering classmates with poetry. Every break would get like, "Oh my God, I read this book and there's this poem," and then I would perform it for them. So it was magical for me, because here we were reading our own poetry and every poem was an adventure. So I was hooked. And that was in 2007. And I've been hooked ever since.
Thank you. Michelle?
How would I know? When I was in high school, I remember the Lantern Meat came. I think one of my teachers was a member of the group, so a bunch of gentlemen came. I don't share my name, my name with them, but so being in a single-sex school, it was like a big thing. So we were we're supposed to be honest, so we went and we were in the literature class. So we went to the poetry, and it turned out to be actually fun because it was an extracurricular activity where you could get to be yourselves and not exactly be judged, because everyone is being judged anyway. So I think that's basically how I got initiated.
Were you always writing?
Definitely, yes, but not just specifically poetry.
What kind of stuff do you write?
At that point, I think it was more journaling, and then mainly journaling and writing stories, and a bit of poetry, although I think it really wasn't the best because it really wasn't refined anyway. But yeah, basically journaling and writing short stories.
Okay, so I haven't been to the Lantern Meet Circle, but from the stories I've heard, it's one of the fiercest places to be. So what is that like for you, having your poetry shared in that space?
When you come to the Meet Circle, I don't know how, I haven't been to the most recent one, but when we used to come, in the beginning, of course, it was fun, and everyone was just reading their poetry, and it was, but as we saw each other every fortnight and got used to each other, it became quite serious, I would say. Okay. The best way to say it is either in Uganda or in Onyoro, but I'll say it in English. I will do a direct translation because my tongue is heavy. You had better come with your belt tightened. That's really how it is. Oh my gosh, it's how best to describe it. You write your poetry with so much feeling and sentiment, and by the time you're done and you say, this is the poem I'm going to present, you're really attached to it. And then you bring it to the circle, and someone asks a question, what does this thing mean? Like, what do you mean? Wasn't I clear? So it's quite an experience. I don't know how to really describe it for you. You have to experience it. That's just it. Okay. Chef.
You say fiercest, right? I don't think it's the fiercest place to be because it's more, the people there are usually honest. So most times we're used to, okay, if you don't have friends who are poets or writers, when you write something, you feel like a god. And most times before people come to like a critiquing circle, they have this whole godlike complex, this whole Napoleon complex to them. And so when you come to the circle, everybody writes, and everybody's there to make you better and to pass on knowledge and judgment as well. So I like coming to the circles because when I don't, I feel like what I've written is just magical. And yet, to be honest, if you actually take off your scales, you're like, no. So.
Okay, so the space helps you grow. It's helped you grow. Both of you have poems in the Streetlights at Noon Eclipse anthology. Do you have a favorite? I would prefer the ones in the book, but you can. Yes. Okay. It doesn't have to be set in stone. You can change your mind later.
There were a couple of poems I was surprised made the book. Like, wait, what? They actually thought this one was okay? So it was, I don't know, you have different attachments to each poem. And for me, the poems that are in the book are written at such different times of my life. And I don't know if I can pick a favorite. I really don't know if I can pick a favorite, because it's truth be told, the poem I really, really wanted to be in the book didn't make
Didn't
the
make
cut. I don't know. I don't know. But it's I have different attachments to each poem. I can't say that I would pick.
How about you?
When they asked the question, I was so sure about my favorite poem, but my favorite. Ashamed to have a favorite. But however, my favorite is, I think it's called Little Big Lanterns. I wrote it for my mom, so yeah, I'm kind of happy to make the cut.
Okay. So, what inspires you to write? And how would you describe your writing?
No, we're going past this one.
Let's see. I think there's different things depending on season. Sometimes you have to write because you have to write. And then there are times when there's something that's heavy on your heart or it keeps making noise in your head and so you just want to put it down on paper. But mostly I would say my imaginary world, if that makes sense. But yeah, so basically the stuff that goes on in my head that I create and isn't really happening, but yeah.
How would you describe your writing? Your poetry?
What inspires me? That's the first question. I would say everything, because okay, I guess it depends on what exactly I'm writing. My poetry has always been a story. I rarely write about feelings or ideas, or I'm always telling a story. So if there's an idea that I'm putting forward, it has to be a story. And most of the stories come from things I see every day. I'm in a taxi, I'm babysitting, I'm watching TV, I'm talking to someone. So I would say everything. Just if something catches my heart, then I will try to write about it. If it's the essays and maybe the short stories, those ones really come from issues that just can't let me go. I think I had a previous conversation with both with Charity and other members of the Lantern Meet. I have, in my head, there is a need to talk about grief. From personal experience and from seeing how my family has evolved over the years and what grief does to people, but also just experiencing in a way that, say, the trauma of life. And so there's a constant need, banging, you'd say, in my head, that I have to talk about this, I have to talk about this, I have to talk about this. So every time I sit down to write a short story or write an essay, I will be talking about grief in one way or the other, because in my head, I have to figure out how to get past grief, how to get past loss, how to deal with the constant cycle of you have something, now it's not there. You had someone, now they're not there. You wanted something, you couldn't get it. And yet you have to essentially wake up the next morning and continue. So those are definitely constant themes in my writing. The next question was, how would I describe my writing? Maybe you ask again.
Okay, so somebody else would be able to describe.
Definitely. I don't think I can really give you. I feel like it's very different. It depends on what I'm trying to say. It depends on how I'm feeling. It depends on where I am at that time in my life. My early writing was very angry. and hard, a lot of fighting. Then there was a very philosophical phase of my life. So the poetry that came out of it was, how does the world work?
In the air.
You know? Then there was, I guess, the more, again, the phase of pragmatism. And we have to forge a way forward, and this is what we do, kind of thing. So I guess for me, it evolves. Yeah. As I change, so does.
So your writing reflects your season, it reflects what you're dealing with. Michelle, is that the same for you?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I don't think, okay, unless it's a set standard, like maybe you're writing a book of summaries, but usually writing is, I don't know what it is. As you go. I can't remember what the word is, but it comes as you go with the flow.
Okay. All right. So I have just one or two last questions before we finish. One is around the idea of you're both women, different places on the age spectrum. But how do you deal with the obligations from society, the set parameters for you as women, for us as women? How do you deal with those stereotypes and the limitations of that to do this? How do you create the time to write? Because it takes time.
If I had an answer to that question, I would have 5 books by now, sure. Day by day, I think there are just so many limitations. Generally for us as people, I am a Ugandan female living on the continent. So there's so many limitations just from where I am at this, where I was born, how I was raised, which family I'm in, what access I've had to, there are all those limitations just as a person. But as a female, I think my biggest struggle came with writing, especially with finding the time to write, and came after I got married and I had children. When I was single, I could do whatever I wanted. Really, as in, I was churning out work like crazy. And I just, like, gosh, I'm so wonderful. Here, I'm writing all the time. And I could not imagine that there would be a time when it would be difficult for me to actually find the time to write. It was unimaginable. If you had asked me at the time, I would have said, no, I will always have time to write. But the reality of my life is that it's very, very difficult. There are just so many demands on my time that writing sometimes feels like a distraction. Not like the most important, as in ideally, for me it should be the most important thing, but it feels like it's a distraction from the business of life. From raising children, from having a relationship, from making a business work, it just, like, where do I find the time to write? In terms of the stereotypes, for me, what people think about me has mattered very little, generally. So it's been a lot more what I put on myself. It's been a lot more what I put on myself, because yes, you meet the limitations, you meet the skepticism of, hey, you're a woman, oh, you're an engineer, hey, congratulations, like, oh, how wonderful, imagine you've made it. And like, oh, you're a writer. And then you can see these people, that disbelief and almost, they don't take you seriously. So those have always been there. And if you're growing up in our society as a woman, I would be surprised if you had not met it. I mean, you go to school, you hear the things people say. I had one of my engineering lecturers gave a grand speech and told us how women really don't. Most of you will not do structures. And we look at him like, why would that be an important thing to say in an engineering class? Why is that important to say? So those are the things that we have to deal with all the time. So I think for me, because I wanted to do engineering and there are already such limitations for women in science, I was ready for that fight. I came out ready. So I didn't consider them much when I wanted to write. On the other side, I didn't consider them much. They're irritating, but it's for me more it's limitations I put on myself, and also just trying to navigate being an adult, being responsible for other human beings, at the same time trying to pursue a dream that I've had since I was a child.
Could you kindly repeat the question?
Okay, so the question is, how do you, I can remember it, but how do you, how do you navigate the limitations that are placed on us being women, and yet still be able to do the things you want to do, especially writing?
Okay, so I think I've lived a very sheltered life because I've never at a point felt limited, or maybe just the way I was brought up, but I haven't had any issues with being a woman in writing or in any other field, because maybe I have selective hearing as well, so maybe it's been a thing, but I haven't really had any limitations. However, the time thing is, like she said, you always imagine you'll have time to write like you did before. And now, most times I have the time, but then the mental strength to actually sit and write. Because people believe when you're writing, you just sit and like a poem comes out. But then there's the editing, which is the hardest bit, and then trying to structure sentences and create a whole idea and theme. So at this point in my life, my biggest limitation in writing would be that I have to make my mental strength more resilient and be focused and know that I'm going to take this time, and this time is going to be for this, no distractions. Yeah.
Okay, so the idea of just being disciplined with the craft. Okay, last question. Has the reality of being a writer been anything like what you be? What's been different?
It's taking longer than I expected. I guess for me, it's you read a book that changes your life. I love books. I love to read books. Books are just incredible. So there's so many books that I've read that have made such impact on the way I am, on who I am. And I want to write a book like that. And I think when I was younger, I expected it, I thought it would be easy. Because I thought about writing all the time, I thought about books all the time. I knew what worked in this book, I knew what didn't work in the other. I thought it would be, I really did think it would be easy. So it's been something to realize that actually no, it's not easy. Especially to write a book that means something. I don't know if I'm making sense in that. In 2011, I started writing a story, and in the middle of the story, I had a cousin. A cousin passed away tragically, but the events surrounding that made me realize that the things I was writing were empty. That I was creating words that didn't really mean anything. When it was put against real life, it paled in comparison. And yet for me, the most important books kind of become real. They hold up a candle, as in they really just hold up a mirror to life, and you recognize life. But I was writing something that just wasn't it. And so it became very important for me to actually grow up. So I think that's what it is. But what I was writing lacked the maturity it needed for it to mean something. So I had to spend more time growing. And that's something that I feel that was an important marker for me. Because then the things I write will be more than just for me. They'll be able to mean something for someone else. So yeah, I guess the thing about writing that has been different for me is that how much of myself would have to be exposed. Yes. I think so.
One, I never. Way back when I was younger, I think writing was more a distressing mechanism. Like you'd write and then you'd write. I was always very exposing. I don't think I was such an open book. I didn't really have value secrecy. So mine is like a whole different. So right now I'm learning that not everything I want to say has to be said, and that they, like she said, things have to actually matter. What you say, the words you say matter, and even if it's 10 people or one person, provided it matches to the audience you're reaching out to, I think that makes sense. You had said the thing of the books that change your lives. I believe that some of the books that change your lives do not change some people's lives, and that's okay. So I am teaching myself that if I am writing something and there are people who do not like it or do not get it, that's fine, because you can't win everybody, and not everybody has the same perspective about different things, because we all have different experiences that we've been through. Like, for example, grief. There's some people grieve in different ways. Some people might grieve for 10 years, some people a week. So I'm learning that it's not all about reaching a larger audience, but rather realizing what I want my audience to be, and then narrowing down a lot.
Knowing yourself. Okay. All right. So thank you so much. Because of time, we'll end this session here. Thank you so much, Richard and Michelle. And once again, congratulations on your publishing in Street Lights. And Michelle, we look forward to the release of your anthology next year. And for everyone else, we thank you so much for joining us. Would like to invite you to join us in the next room, and Amoti will be taking us through that. Just a second.
Can I ask a question about the anthology?
Okay, I'm trying to